Hi, Colin Davis here, ShadowTechAlchemy.com, SolutioPodcast.com, MelissaMariMovie.com, and this is our regular Tuesday broadcast. It is the 13th of January now, and I'm gonna just talk for a little bit, and then I'll tell you what the agenda for tonight is, and you can always. I encourage you to comment on the chat and to even call into the show. Like after I'm done talking for a little while, I'm going to invite you guys to call in to the show. And the phone numbers are at solutiopodcast.com. So you just go there, SOLUTIO podcast.com. And the phone numbers are there. You can call in through WhatsApp or through my Google Voice number. And I really encourage you guys to do that, to go ahead and call me like it's a radio show. I've set it up that way. And so you can tell me about what you're doing in terms of your inner work, of your alchemical process, and or you can ask me questions or get feedback on any issue or anything like that. Just, it's totally great. That's what I want this show to be about. This is a place for you guys, really, because I could just make video broadcasts, like I could make nice video presentations that I just put on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, and just make them like that, very nice and tight and clean and everything, and just put those out as educational videos. But I want to have a place where you guys can hang out and where you can talk and where we can, because we can't really find each other in our local areas. There's not that many people who are really working on themselves or who think from a second tier perspective and are studying Jungian psychology or integral theory or any of the things that we're interested in here. We can't find those people locally. I mean, hopefully there'll be somebody we could find. And so we kind of have to use the internet to find each other. And so that's what this is. And so I encourage you to use the platform as a way to connect with other people and to have a community of inner alchemists. That's what this is really all about. So, And I know I've been tending to kind of repeat, what the show is about, what is an alchemist, what do we do, and all that. But that's partially because the show is new, and I know that people that are coming in here, need to hear that. They need to know, what is this, and the term alchemist or alchemy is not really well understood. And so, what is an alchemist? What do we do? Am I one of you? I mean, what is this? So I tend to kind of repeat myself a little bit that way. But an alchemist is, well, first of all, we're talking about an inner alchemist, right? And so this is the easiest way to kind of to talk about this, or to give you an example of what this is just to go back to Jungian psychology. Go back to Carl Jung, to what he was doing, his process called individuation. And look at what Jung was doing and open up that whole thing. And that really shows you what this is about. Now, that's his particular version of doing the work. And his particular version was actually quite rooted in Western alchemy, because he studied that very deeply, and he recognized that what he was doing, the inner evolution work that he was doing, and with his colleagues and with his patients, was basically the psychological version of what alchemists were doing physically. Now, there were also, psychological, before we had the science of psychology, there were psycho-spiritual alchemists also that focused not just on the physical aspect, but on the internal aspect as well. But Jung was trying to figure out what these people were doing and what all their art, their symbolism meant, and translate it back into the 20th century and try to overlay it onto what he was doing. And then he also kind of plugged it into, all kinds of other spiritual disciplines through all cultures and times. But so what that is kind of, I think, an easy way to explain what we're doing. If somebody says, well, what's an alchemist? You could say, well, do you know who Carl Jung is? Do you know what Jungian psychology is? Yeah, or maybe they won't know. But if they say yes to that, then you say, well, that's basically it. And that's kind of a simple explanation for it. Now, as alchemists, we're not, we're in our own laboratories. Our own psyches and our own relationships are our personal laboratories. And so we can do anything we want to in our laboratories. This is our psyche. This is our developmental work. And so we do whatever we want. And I mean, I use Carl Jung as a great example, but some people are into Gurdjieff or Eastern practices of various kinds, and people are into different things, and that might fit for them better. But I kind of think that Westerners, and Jung was clear about this, that Westerners really probably need to kind of root themselves in the esoteric tradition of Western civilization because it matches their psyche. So it seems to me that, and from my own experience of looking at Jungian psychology, and then also looking not as deeply, but looking also at Buddhism and Taoism and Eastern Indian yogic practices and understandings. I kind of just dabbled in it, not that much, but to get a feel for it. Is that where we are now? It kind of feels like we're really integrating all of these things together, and it seems natural for me, at least, to kind of pull upon all these different traditions and just pull in whatever works for you. But one of the things that they don't really have so much in the East is the shadow work. Whereas in the Jungian system, and especially where it's gone since Jung's time, is really a big part of it. And that is an obvious part of alchemy, because, right, alchemy starts with the negrito. If you just have it in the 3-stage explanation, which is the simple one, you have the negrito, the albedo, the rubedo, and the negrito is the first stage. The blackening, the shadow work, is the first thing that we're doing on this path. And in the East, it's not so much there. It's more about kind of it's more kind of about practices that lift you out of the ego rather than working with the ego complexes. And so you kind of have to go back to shamanism to get more back to the shadow work side, where it's soul retrieval, and that kind of a thing. But so anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from with the whole thing. And obviously, this is about evolving yourself. It's about healing yourself. It's about working through your complexes, working through your neurotic behavior, your triggers, right? All of the ways in which that you were fractured from childhood difficulties, or that you inherited this stuff from your parents and ancestors. And so in order, you recognize intuitively that you have talents, that you have a soul path, but that it is being to some degree thwarted by these fractures within yourself, by this inner dissociation. And so you need to work on yourself. You need to heal yourself. You need to get yourself back together, right? And so that's what we're doing, and that's what psychology is about, basically, or any psycho-spiritual healing practice, whatever it is, however you're doing it. And so that's what we're doing here, so there you go. That's what this is about, and so this is a place for us to compare notes and to share ideas with each other, and since it's my show, I guess it's my responsibility to give out information to you guys that I feel will help you. And so there we go. Now, during the week, I take notes, like just on my phone or whatever, and I just think about what am I going to talk about in the next week, in the next broadcast, and so I usually just kind of put some bullet points down on my iPad here, and then kind of just look at them and just improvise. But I think right now what I'm going to do is I wrote some notes that I think are very succinct, and the language is what is done well. And so I think I'm just going to read this to you. And the title of the note was "How to Develop," right? How to mature, how to do the work, what we're doing, just specifically. And what I'm going to read to you now is just a little summary of just something that came off the top of my head when I was just probably cooking breakfast or something like that. But I thought, okay, this is a good thing to read on the show. So I'm going to do that. And so here we go. I can't see you right now, but I'm reading my notes, but it should all be going well. All right, move this over. How to actually develop. Our society encourages adults to specialize and to identify themselves. Also, let me start over again, sorry. Get the mic a little closer. How to actually develop. Our society encourages adults to specialize and to identify themselves. Also to stay young and simplistic, which means staying immature. But the soul is deprived of its potential fullness or wholeness. Each stage of life should be an exploration into a new dimension. It's natural for a man to be a warrior or an engineer, but if that's all he can be and the only way he can identify, he's one-sided, as Jung called it. If a woman is beautiful and seductive, or even if she's a warrior, that's amazing, but she can't keep that up for life. So we want to develop all the aspects of our personality as they show themselves. Just fell off the screen there. Hold on a second. As they show themselves. And if a personality aspect is buried in the shadow, we want to dig it out and work with it, then put it into our lives. So this path is soul-making, as Hillman called it. I like that term. It's alchemical. We're making the philosopher's stone. The essence of the alchemical path is self-awareness. Awareness is what is happening inside of our minds and inside of our bodies. From there, it's awareness of what's happening inside the field of relationship and within the field that connects us with others and nature. Rather than letting inner and outer stimuli become our perceptions, we have a dual focus. There's what I'm perceiving, and then there is me, the perceiver. My continual aim is to stay above the perceptions, the feelings, the reactions, and to watch myself in action. This requires a life that has adequate periods of quiet and not being continually bombarded with stimulus. But even when life is busy, we're still aware, watching ourselves from above, like a director watching the actor perform. Awareness of self gets deeper and deeper as we age. At first, we become aware of what we reacted to after the fact. Then we become aware of our reactivity as we are reacting. Eventually, we become aware of it before it occurs, and then we have more ability to choose. Free will is not really present if we don't have the ability to choose to react or not react. This type of practice and growth is well established in Eastern spiritual disciplines. The next level of the alchemical work is the shadow work. Here we continue to become aware of our inner state and what comes up, but we're on the lookout for negative thoughts, judgments, feelings, images, memories, and the like. Instead of distracting away from this, we actually focus down on it and then trace it down to its roots. We're taking an inventory of the negative or shadowy inner material that has been there for a long time, but which we have not wanted to look at. So in this shadow awareness practice, we're pushing back against the discomfort and going into these thoughts and feelings because we know that doing so is the medicine we need. We're cleaning out the closet. We then become aware of how we project our own shadow material onto others and how we use disharmonious activities and behavior to displace our shadow energy into the world. We recognize that what triggers us in others or in the world is actually an aspect of ourselves residing within our own shadows that we learn to trace down and integrate. As we become more conscious of our shadow material, we engage in various practices to integrate that material. We write about it in our journals, we talk about it with other alchemists or therapists, we make art out of it, we find mythological examples that correspond to it, we study our dreams. We study our dreams in the process. There are also techniques such as those described by internal family systems therapy or John Ruskin's emotional clearing practice, and many kinds of somatic practices to help us integrate our shadow material. As we get deeper into the shadow work, we use multiple models and maps to recognize the nature of our inner darkness and of complexes which are autonomous parts of the psyche which interfere in life. We have to use many metaphors and maps to make sense of the psyche, and we continue to update our maps and discover new maps to help us see into this invisible domain. The alchemist also uses the external world as a mirror of their internal state. Whether it's synchronicities that show up in life or it's the behavior of other people in our lives that we use to understand ourselves at a deep level. Because the human psyche is not just contained within and around the body, but is an embodied and relational field of energy and information, Dan Siegel, and everything that happens to you and around you can be mined for symbolic meaning. As above, so below. As within, so without is the maxim that corresponds to this work. Melissa Mari and I called it living in the movie. Fell off there a little bit, but I think you got it. The alchemist takes 100% responsibility for everything that happens to them and through them. While the majority of the world is busy reacting without awareness, distracting from their inner state and being thrown about by collective forces, the alchemist is learning to refine their spiritual vehicle, increase the fidelity of their being, and surf the waves of life and culture. We are learning to become co-directors of the movie of life. Materialism, social roles, so-called success, and the like are not our top priorities. We're interested in the evolution of our own consciousness, and therefore we are participating with nature in the evolution of human consciousness. None of this is to say that we should not participate in society, fulfill goals, or be successful in the establishment of those goals. And it is not to say that we should live in abject deprivation of our bodily and sensory needs. Not at all. But our lives are above all else directed by this spiritual endeavor to develop, to become more whole, more mature, self-reflective, non-reactive, loving, compassionate, giving, and creative. In many ways, this path is not dissimilar from the spiritual path of any religious ascetic. There's always a certain percentage of human beings who are completely dedicated to God, and we are as well, but the way in which we perceive God and that which God has sent us to do is the maturation of our own psyches for the benefit of mankind. So that kind of, let me turn this off there. So that kind of, I think that kind of sums up what we're doing, what the alchemist is doing. And I'm just one person, on one particular path. I'm just one alchemist. And for 12 years, I had Melissa Mari in my relational field, and we were doing this work together. And we're putting it into art, into music. We created the band The O1 Experience. We wrote Shadow Tech, and then I later wrote Transforming Darkness. And so we were doing it together. And it was just the most incredible thing I could imagine. I had no idea that was going to happen. and it just happened. We were obviously soulmates, and we had a greater purpose. And now that Melissa's not here, it's on one hand incredibly shocking, and it's been a whole year now, and I've been grieving the whole year, and it's been hard. And I made that movie about her, melissamarimovie.com. And so now here I am on the other side of that, and I'm by myself. And so it's my job now to take everything that we did, everything we discovered, and to disseminate it, to put it out there. And I was going to tell you guys about this. We lived, obviously, we're living on synchronicities, being guided by synchronicities, being guided by our dreams, being guided by all kinds of downloads and transmissions that we're getting. But one time we went to like some kind of a get-together, some kind of a party or some kind of an event at this place called Cloud 9 in Berkeley, California. And they were having some kind of an event there. I don't remember what it was. It was art, and it was a very arty kind of a place. And when we went in there, we paid our money at the door, and next to the guy with the taking our money at the door, he was at a podium, and there was a bowl with some aluminum coins in it. I'll have to go. There's one over there. I didn't bring it over, but there are these aluminum coins in it, these nicely stamped decorative aluminum coins. And we said, "What are these?" And he said, "Oh, those are something that one of our sponsors, had these left over from an event, and there's some left. You can each have one if you want one." So we did, and there were two different ones, and one of them had a tree on it, like a tree of life, and it said "Plant the seed." And the other one had some kind of a water symbol on it, and it said "Go with the flow." And those were very important to us, and we recognized that this is the mission, this is the mandate, this is kind of how it's supposed to work. Plant the seed, go with the flow. And we always went back to that. Plant the seed, go with the flow. And so when it comes to this work, when it comes to the alchemy, and when it comes to any kind of a movement for this, because I look back to the human potential movement, right, of the 60s and 70s. That was the last incarnation of what I think Melissa and I are involved in, we're involved in. But when we came into it, it had kind of crashed down. And we haven't really come back up with it in the next iteration yet. And so I kind of feel like I'm sitting here sort of at the very base of it, at the beginning of the next iteration, of the next wave. And it's clear to me that this next wave is going to include some things that the last wave didn't include. And the main thing is the shadow. Yeah. So the main thing is the shadow and the shadow work, the trauma work, however you want to call it. And so, but the society is very unconscious, and it is very caught up in all kinds of speedy stuff, materialism and speedy stuff, and running around, and it is a very repressed society, and we are very materialistic, and we don't really have time and space or the sort of cultural orientation to as a culture, as an entire civilization, to really start to go in the direction that we the alchemists go into. So this is not something for the general public, and but it is something that once this gets going and once this takes off, it will end up influencing the general public in one way or another. And so we're the pioneers of this. And so, I've really identified where Melissa and I are in the whole thing and why it is that what we were doing and talking about was so difficult for people to take up readily. And so, and so I've really kind of had to really zoom out and see the greater ecosystem of culture and where we're at, and lose the naivety and the idealism, and look at this from a perspective of a longer timeline, right? Like I always talk about the yuga cycles. Look at it in terms of these vast yuga cycles that are thousands of years long. And so, so that's where we get back to plant the seed and go with the flow, right? And so each of us creates a seed. We create the seed, we plant the seed, and then we go with the flow. And whatever happens, happens. But we still take it extremely seriously because this is what we're here to do. And we recognize that this is what we're here to do. We are in our own laboratories of psyche, and we are pushing the cutting edge of human evolution in our own practices, in our own lives. And we're not doing some kind of meditative escapism or whatever of like, just experiencing non-dual states or whatever. We're in the world, we're in life, we're in relationship, and we are using that to show us ourselves, as a mirror to show us ourselves. And then we're working through all of our inner reactivity, we're working through our repressed content, we're working through our fears, our grief, our guilt, all our stuff, all our junk. We're talking to our parts, or we're learning what the language of our inner parts is. And we are we're staying connected to nature, and we're constantly looking to be informed by, in Jung's term, by the big S self. The capital S self, the big self, the master self, the master code. We're always looking to be informed by that, and then we direct ourselves in that direction. That's what we're doing. And then by us doing that, and then putting it into art, putting it into speech, putting it into books, putting it into social media posts, talking to friends, going to conferences, however we do it, we then we spread the seed, this information, this way of being, and then whatever happens, happens. But so that's what we're doing. Now, let us see where we are, and let me refresh this here so that I can make sure that the chat is working and stuff. Yeah, okay, it's all working. So yeah, so there we are. And I recognize that this is a lonely path, and this is actually why I'm, another reason why I'm out here is because I'm looking for the other alchemists. And when you get just a few of these people together, you got something amazing. When you get 2 of them together, you have something incredible. And if you can get 5 or 10, what if you could get 100 of them together, right? Then you got something truly amazing. Now, I have some other stuff on on the agenda for today. So that was your intro. That was your introduction. And now I'm going to give you something practical. And I'm going to give you something practical. And so I would encourage, like I said in the beginning, we're very rooted in Jungian psychology here, in the Jungian way, as it were. And I'm going to point you to an author named Robert L. Moore. And the book that a lot of people know about is called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And it's kind of obviously from the title, it's pointed at men, but all you need is a little bit of translation, and then it just goes right over to women as well. And then we can do some translation ourselves here. But so it's very, very elegant. First of all, Robert Moore is a big influence of mine, and a lot of his lectures have been uploaded to YouTube. And he didn't just lecture to men or anything like that. There was what was called the mythopoetic men's movement that was going on in the late 80s and 90s. And there's people like Robert Bly and Michael Mead and others involved in that. And Robert Moore, who didn't really, didn't get into this to lecture to men or anything. It was just in it for as a Jungian, was just in it for the entire work of inner development and the mapping of the psyche. But he kind of went in that direction for a little while and got influential and did some really great work in that area. So, but you can find him, but men and women, I encourage to listen to him. So he has this, in Jungian psychology, you have a, I see a comment here. I'm going to respond to the comment, and then I'm going to give you the full kind of rundown of Robert Moore's system. Serene Integral says, you should collaborate with Adam Lowen, YouTuber, on Unthink Me, fellow second tier. Oh, okay, great. I'll look into him. Appreciate your willingness to do this work. Do we even have there you go, see? Do we even have a choice? That's what an alchemist says, because we don't have a choice. We have no choice. This is what we're here to do, and we have no choice. And there's nothing that can interfere, right? If anything tries to take us off track, we might go off track for a little bit, but then we come back to it. And then after getting off track from it a number of times, we realize we can't get off track anymore. This is what we have to focus on. Now we can do all kinds of other things in life. We can have families, we can have a career or whatever. I'm a musician and I still have to, practice and go on tour and do things. And I work on other people's music, and I got stuff going on also that's not just psychology or psychospirituality, but everything comes back to this constantly. So Robert Moore's system. So in Jungian psychology, they basically use mythology as an analog to show us, as a metaphor, as an outer image, as a collective. Mythology is the collective psyche. And so they look at all the different mythological characters in different traditions, and then they interpret them as psychological complexes. They interpret them as psychological archetypes, and so there's a lot of them. And what if you go to Greek mythology and you try to interpret all of that? Well, that's a lot of scripts. That's a lot of stories. That's a lot of archetypes. That's a lot of complexes to work with. And so what Robert Moore did was he kind of simplified it down, and he claims that it was Toni Wolff, Jung's partner, one of Jung's partners, or not. I don't know what you consider her actually, but Toni Wolff, who started the work and was doing it on the feminine psyche, and she was trying to break it into 4 main archetypes, because Jung was into this whole thing of the quaternity and mandalas and the fourfold nature of the psyche. And so Robert Moore picked that up and kind of continued to clarify that. And he basically said it looks like there's these 4 main archetypes that kind of everything comes down to this. And men have this and women have this, but it's a little different in each sex. And so you have the warrior, the magician, the lover, and the royal. And you need the warrior, the magician, and the lover to all come together to be balanced before you can really even get into the royal. But once you can have the royal, but it'll be an unclean version of it. In order to get a clean, balanced version of the royal, the king or the queen, you need to have these other archetypes balanced. And so, so basically, and if you look at this, because all models are simplifications, but when you look at this, you realize, yeah, this is pretty elegant, and things kind of fit together there. So I'm going to explain those different archetypes to you. So, the warrior, and these things are present in men and women. The warrior, let me back up a little bit more. An archetype is a transpersonal, energetic pattern that has been established in this human psyche after generations and generations and generations and generations of trial and error. And originally it comes from nature. And so these are behavioral patterns, energetic flows of the psyche, you could say. And they manifest in the energy, the libido energy that makes us want to do stuff, gives us energy. They manifest themselves in culture, in mythology, and in all kinds of culture. And so, so the warrior energy is the warrior, right? It's the one that is using aggression to defend or to achieve outcomes physically in the world. And the warrior has the capacity, when the warrior archetype is active in the psyche, it has the capacity to target what it wants, to make an assessment, and to go do it, and to get it done. And so that's the warrior. Now, and it uses aggression, it uses drive, it uses will. If that archetype, if that energetic line is imbalanced because the individual had, their own, let's say, father or mother's warrior energy was imbalanced, and they got a bad example of that, or they were in some way traumatized, or something happened in childhood that knocked that out of alignment, that potential development of that, if they weren't initiated properly, especially boys initiated properly in adolescence, and all kinds of reasons why you could have a pathology, you could have a dissociation there. Well, then you have a shadow expression of the archetype. And so there's an active and passive side of the shadow expression of any archetype in Robert Moore's system. So the active side is the warrior becomes sadistic. And on the passive side, the warrior becomes masochistic. And so it's an externalizing shadow warrior energy or an internalizing shadow warrior energy, right? Self-destructive or destructive of others. And it's getting its jollies, it's getting off on harming, on hurting, right? So you look at all the chicken hawks, all the warmongers in government, right? That just can't wait to go to another war. These are shadow warriors. And so what that means is that they're sadistic on the outside, but that means that there's an inward side to it also. And so they can flip. And so when your particular warrior complex might prefer dumping it out into the world, but it will periodically flip, and then it'll come back on you, and then it will start to destroy yourself in all kinds of ways. So that's the shadow side of the warrior. Then you have the magician. The magician is the aspect of the psyche that figures stuff out. It figures it out. It says, how does that work? What's going on there? What makes that tick? How can I figure that out and make that work for me, right? And actually, these archetypal qualities are actually in every type of life. Even like single-celled bacteria have these qualities, right? You just have to reinterpret it for their environment and their situation, and you'll see that these are there. Life has a magician quality to it. It's figuring it out. It's scanning the environment, and it's saying, what is this? How do I get from A to B without destroying myself? Maybe I have to take a left here, maybe I have to take a right here, and then I have to remember what I did. I might have to modify that next time. So this is the magician archetype, and it wants to figure things out and be a problem solver. It's the problem solver aspect of the psyche. And in Robert Moore's system, when the magician is fractured, when it's been harmed through development, then or the archetype itself is not harmed, but the complex that would rely on that archetype in the psyche is to some degree wounded. Well, then the magician will become one of there'll be a shadow expression, an active and a passive side, just like the warrior. And the active side of the magician is the manipulator. It's like the black magician. It's the one that uses their ability to think, to figure stuff out, to, do something criminal, right? Or to do something immoral, right? So you see all this is constantly going on in in politics and banking and all that stuff, right? You can think of every kind of example of this. So it's using its brains to be able to figure stuff out for the benefit of itself while harming the world. But then the other side of the magician, the other shadow expression, the passive shadow expression of the magician, is what Robert Moore calls the dummy. And this is the person who says, I don't know, man. I just can't figure it out. I don't know. And you say, well, listen, I'm going to explain this to you. This is how it works. A connects to B, B connects to C, C connects to D. And they're looking at you and their eyes are just glazing over. Like, I don't know. Can't you just do it for me? Can I just call somebody to do this? And so they can't figure it out. They can't figure their lives out. They can't problem solve their lives. And they're always needing somebody else to do it for them. So they have a magician like everybody does, but they have, you could say in IFS, they have parts, right, that are activated, that are getting in the way of them having a healthy expression of that, right? So they have to become aware of that and then start to work on the original fracturing that caused that. And a lot of times it's inherited, of course. But so there's that. So there's the manipulator side of the magician, and then there's the I can't figure anything out, the dummy side. Then there's the lover. The lover is the third major flow archetype, and this is the archetype of relatedness and sensuality and love. This is the feminine archetype, right? And so this is sensuality, love, relatedness, bonding, empathy, all of this. This is coming through the lover archetype. And when the lover is shadowy, on the active side, it becomes an addict, right? So it's either becomes addicted to drugs, or becomes addicted to sex, or becomes addicted to just any kind of behavior that it allows it to constantly, feel alive. Because when the lover archetype is on, you feel very, very alive. It's very spiritual in a way. You feel very connected, very alive, and in joy, and and everything's great. It's ecstasy. It's the archetype of ecstasy. And so when this is on the active side of the shadow of the lover is an addict. And then the passive side is the individual who can't touch their lover. They can't feel that. They can't touch ecstasy. They can't get into joy. They can't let go. They can't feel sensuous. They can't relate very well. They can't empathize very well. They're cut off from the lover, right? And this is just the worst, right? This is just the worst situation. I mean, I guess both sides of that are terrible. But of all these expressions can be really nasty and just pathological, and then, you know, across society, every kind of version of this is being expressed in people. So that's the three kind of warrior, magician, lover archetypal expressions that have to be there and that have to be balanced. If you can get those together in a healthy way, then you can move into this mode of adulthood, of maturation, of actual adulthood that is called the royal. So that's the king in men and the queen in women. And the royal is like is basically, I mean, in a simple way to put it, although Jung and Robert Moore and people would make it much more, they would make it more complex than this, but you could simply say this is the father and the mother, right? And so, but it's more than just a biological father and mother. It is the archetype of the good father and the good mother. And it's not just the mother of yourself, or not just the mother of your family, it's the mother of the community. So the king is when he's healthy, he's beneficent. He is the maker of laws. He does make the laws. He does, hold the boundaries of the kingdom and do those things. But he's also the blesser of individuals. He blesses people. He sees their talents. He sees their genius, and then he gives them opportunities for them to grow and for them to develop, just like a good father does. And he does this on behalf of the community, his community, whatever that is. And the queen does the same thing, but she does it more on the mothering side and more on the nurturance side. And so these are the healthy expressions of the royal. And so what you're doing in life under this, what the alchemist is doing, what the person who's dedicated to inner evolution is doing, is they're working with these flows. They're becoming conscious of them. Where's my warrior? Where's my magician? Where's my lover? Where's my king? Where's my queen? Where am I in this process? Where am I getting shadowy? What's out of whack? Tracing it back. That's because my mom was that way. That's because my dad was that way. Well, what's at the core of that? What different fears are at the core of that? Or what different kinds of leftovers of wounding or abandonment or early fears and are still back there, and then pulling those into consciousness. That's like what I was reading to you earlier, just the basic shadow awareness work, shadow awareness and shadow integration work through whatever system or practice. But so that's what we're doing. We're keeping an eye on these things. This is our radar screen. Okay, where are we with these archetypes and these expressions? And then how can I start to bring these back into balance? And I think it's very important actually to keep an eye, as you get older, to keep an eye on the formation of the royal in your psyche. Because there are a lot of people right now, men and women, who are very prolific and very talented, and they have access to a lot of genius, and they're all over the place. they're everywhere in life, and you see them as kind of as superstars. But when it comes to the actual roles of the royal, they're not there, right? They're still very competitive and jealous and envious, and they don't really know how to bring people up under them and to mentor people and to nurture people. And so they seem very shiny and very prolific and smart, or just whatever their talent is. Maybe they're athletes, it's not smarts, it's physical athleticism or whatever it is. And they're very good at that, but they're not very good at being kings and queens. And most of them won't develop that fully into that, because they're, I don't want to say most of, who am I to say most of them? But it's very, very common. It's very, very common that as people grow, they kind of, reach the peak with their capacities, and then what they should be doing is they should be flipping into their royal. It's like, okay, once you're not an athlete anymore, now you're a coach, right? And now you're mentoring other people, right? And you're not a broadcaster anymore. Now you run a broadcast company and you look for other broadcasters to bring into your network, right? Or whatever. You're not a belly dancer anymore. You're running a belly dance troupe, and you're training other women and bringing them into the field, into the industry, into the art, and you're mentoring them. So, and you're supporting them, and you're supporting them at the deepest and most mature level that's possible. And you're always working on it. We're all always working on it. But this is what the goal is. This is where we're going. So it's a very elegant, I just described to you in 20, 30 minutes, whatever it is, the whole thing, kind of the basis of it. And there's for the feminine side, there is the let me think about this. There is the female magician. I have to think of what the Jungian terms are for this. The female magician is different from the male magician. The female lover is different from the male lover. The female warrior is similar to the male warrior. And the female magician is even more esoteric and less understood in our society. You can look at Albert Einstein or whatever scientist or something like that and be like, okay, there's the archetypal magician. But the female magician is more like the shamaness, is the curandera, right? It's the witch. We start to use like negative terms to describe her, right? But she's also a problem solver, but she's using more intuition, and she's using woman tools. And then the female lover is different, because a woman is usually, not always, but typically a woman is tapped into the lover in early life because she needs to mate and have children, and then she needs to bond with those children and nurture those children and love those children. So she has to be connected to that heart energy, to that Aphrodite. Well, Aphrodite kind of gets her involved in the relationship, and then she has to become a mother. And so she's using the lover all the time because of her children, and meanwhile the man, this is the sort of the archetypal expression, is out in the world in his 20s using his warrior energy. But then in later life, and it doesn't always go this way, but typically in later life, after the woman's children are gone, then her warrior energy can turn on. And so she can become more goal-oriented. She can go back to school or go into some career, or she can become an activist of some kind, and she can start using her warrior energy in the second half of her life. And then the man in the second half of life, he can calm down, right? He's already kind of made his situation, and now he can kind of relax into it, and he can start being more relational. And in our society, that isn't really well understood. And so people get stuck. They get stuck in the same mode for their whole life. But a woman can't be all sensual and seductive her whole life. And a man can't be this badass, ass-kicking warrior his whole life. He's not supposed to. They're not supposed to do this. And so the man has to develop his lover, his relational aspect, his sensual aspect, his connectedness aspect when he gets a little older, and a woman has to develop her boundaries and her warrior energy. But some people who responded to their upbringing in one way or another, it's kind of flipped. It's not uncommon. And you can have, especially, a woman will develop her warrior early on because she needs to protect herself, right? Because of the certain circumstances in life, in early life. And so she develops that warrior. And the thing about those two archetypes, the warrior and the lover, is they can be they're kind of like oil and water, and you have to make oil and water mix. And so that's a work of a lifetime. And if you're lucky enough to come into this world with an example from your mother and father, that they were already able, from their family, they were already able to balance those two archetypes. And so your father had the warrior energy, but then he also had temperance, and he also had compassion and relatedness, and then he can turn on one or the other depending on the situation. Well, then you're very lucky, right? Or if your mother had that kind of combination, well, then you're that's great, and then you inherited it. Now you can move into the royal much more easily. You can be a royal in your 30s if you come from the right situation. And then the rest of us have to work on it for a lot longer. But at least with this map, we have kind of a model. And in Jungian psychology, all this stuff is in there, and this is just one model out of many. But I like it because it's simple, and it kind of gets to the core of things, and then you can just kind of keep an eye on this this system, on this these energies. Let me ask anybody: does anybody have any questions or comments on that? If Serene Integral is still there, if they want to comment on that, or if anybody wants to add anything, their 2 cents. And by the way, since we're in the second hour right now, anybody that wants to call in can. You can call in now. So the call-in number is in the description. It's been hard to get people to actually take me up on that, but I'm going to keep on saying it until it becomes a thing. And so I'm going to put it on the screen, but it's in the description. It's also at soluciopodcast.com. And where is my thing? Right here on the screen. So yeah. So basically, there's a WhatsApp, and if you're using WhatsApp in any territory in the world, you can just basically, what you do is just text me at that number, and then I'll call you back. I'll just call you back. I'll say, great, just tell me your name, and I'll call you right back, and you'll be on the show. And I just turn you up right here, and it should all be hooked up, and you'll be on the show. Or if you're in the United States, The number's right there, 512-815-2475. And you just text me at that number on your phone, tell me your name, I'll call you back on my other number. So I wanted to put that there, and that's in the description, and it's at soluciopodcast.com. So at any time from here on to the end of the show, if you want to call in, just send me a text through one of those numbers, and I'll call you back and we'll talk. And then you're always free to comment. And so now, greetings. Hi, Theo. As you were talking, I noticed multiple celebs underdeveloped, deficient in the true royal contributions. Yes, this is a big one. Yeah, you're going to notice that. Once you start looking for this, you're going to see all these. And it's not to be expected when people are in their 20s or 30s or anything. This is the kind of thing that we grow up slow in our society now. And so this is the kind of thing where people should be in their 50s and 60s. They should definitely be, by the time you make it to be 60, they should definitely be in the royal for sure. And by the time they make it to 50, you should be showing some, should be able, going in that close to that. But a lot of people have a lot of junk, and we don't have a society that where working on yourself is in general awareness. It's pretty much like if you're falling apart, somebody will suggest you go to therapy. But other than that, who knows anything about that, what that is, or what they do in there? Well, what kind of therapy? I don't know. You just need to go to therapy. So nobody knows what kind of therapy exists. They don't know how to qualify a therapist. They don't know what different models are out there, what different systems are out there, the difference between them or anything. They don't know anything about how to use it on themselves without a therapist. They still think that problems with your body, your health, and different diseases and syndromes and symptoms are separate from your psychology. They don't recognize that by working on your psychology, you end up healing your own symptoms a great deal of the time. Not always, but a great deal of the time you can reduce or eliminate your symptoms through working on yourself. And that's not connected. We're in this world of all the different, back to integral theory, all the quadrants are disconnected. People don't see the connection between, I'm gonna move this, connection between all the quadrants. You could call, but you wouldn't know what to talk about with me. Yeah, you would. I'm just soaking it in right now. I find it good to practice my rhetoric with random people I meet, though. No, I encourage you to call in anytime, tonight or any other time you want to call in, because I will find a subject for us to talk about very quickly, and by just asking you some questions. And so we'll have plenty to talk about. But so feel free to do that if you'd like, or at any time. But yeah, so we have a psychologically illiterate society. We are psychologically illiterate, absolutely illiterate, like to the point of like people 400 years ago that, peasants that couldn't even sign their own name. They would just put an X on a contract. That's the level of illiteracy that we're at psychologically. And I often bring this up that in the 20th century was the huge, was the big movement of the science of psychology. At the same time that we were getting all the other science, the materialist science and the physics, the nuclear physics and the theory of relativity and all the stuff that makes airplanes and bombs and spaceships and all that kind of stuff. And the society said, yes, give us that, more of that, please, please, please. But then psychology was also developing very, very rapidly, and a lot of progress was being made. And there was, the Freudian psychology, I guess, kind of is the one that kind of got into the collective more. But then when we got to the Jungian psychology, and then after that, there's all kinds of other ways of looking at it. There's others in the depth psychology system. Adler's in there, and Robert Moore's really into Kohut, and there's Pierre Genet and whatever, and on and on and on. You can go into all these different people, and they all kind of have a different take and a different system. But our society generally just said, nah, no thanks. We're not interested in that. We want to go to the moon, but we don't want to work on ourselves. We don't want to mature ourselves internally. Okay, you'll call in 20 minutes. Okay, great. That sounds good. So, the way to do it is just send me a text. Just send me a text through one of the two numbers, depending on either WhatsApp, or if you're in the U.S., use the U.S. number, and just send me a text and say hi, and then I'll just call you back. That's the way I'm kind of running it. So anyway, so we're just really kind of in the doldrums, we're just really kind of, and I post stuff on social media that's kind of Jungian or second tier perspective stuff. Like when we had this thing with the shooting in Minnesota, which is it's like another version of the George Floyd thing or whatever. And, I posted something talking about how that I noticed that everybody was taking a side. People use these events, these collective events to take a side, and then to dump their shadow stuff and to blame and to dump all their aggression out at the other side. This is how you get wars and all of this. But we do it on these little micro collective levels. And everybody gets a rush out of the fight, out of the whole thing of, oh, it's your fault. No, it was your fault. No, it was your fault. It's your fault. And all of that. And then then nobody has compassion for the other side or for the predicament, because both of the people, in the woman that was shot by the police officer has left her child, her 6-year-old child now has to grow up without a mother. If you can't see that, that's because you're just all stopped up with this stuff. You're all just full of rage and stuff. You can't access your heart. And then if you also can't see how that cop is messed up, turns out that he had already been in an accident where some other person had dragged him with their car, and he had got a bunch of stitches, and he basically had PTSD. He shouldn't have even been on the force or on the front line. He should have been like, that's going on. Somebody should have said, hey, Joe, I'll take care of it. He shouldn't have even, or whatever his name was, he shouldn't have even been in that situation, right? But we, again, don't have any psychological knowledge or literacy or wisdom. And so we just put people out into these situations. And so now he has to go out there, and he's got a trigger. He's got a trigger finger, and he's he's just in this very, very reactive fight, flight, protective mode. And then the police, they protect each other. The whole fraternity comes together so he knows that he's safe in his group there. And they're all militarized, and they're all pumped up, and then you had a protest going on, so there's chaos everywhere and all of that. This guy he's now going to have to live with that, and he's now going to have to cope with that, and he what's going to happen to him? Can he even be is he going to be able to have that job anymore? Is he going to get dragged through years of court cases? Is he going to go, how's that going to work out? So it's bad for everybody involved. And, but people get so caught up in the inflammation of the whole thing that they can't see straight, and everybody's jumping on everybody else and blaming. So I come in Nobody listens to me, but I come in and I'm like, okay, here's a psychological analysis. Here's how the whole thing works on a collective level. This is how the shadow works and blah, blah, blah. And the Jungians can look at that and they can be like, yes, that's it. That's exactly what's going on. But 99.9% of the public doesn't have that lens. They don't have that perspective. They don't have that training. So they can't see how that works. And so they're just stuck. They're just stuck. Serene says, I read that it was, such a relief. Oh, you're one of my, I have to tell me who you are on Facebook. And so, so to hear my statement on that, I disseminated a vaccine. Well, potentially, I mean, it's good. It kind of sits in people's heads, the people that can actually understand it. And so it sits in their heads and it sits in their minds and they ponder it and stuff. For it to really be a vaccine, you have to actually, give yourself the shot. Because me just talking about it won't do that. You really have to say, okay, I'm going to use this as an example. I'm triggered. I'm being reactive. Let me try to put myself in the shoes of the other person. Like some people were angry at the lady, right? My natural reaction was to support the lady and not the cop. That was my natural reaction. Although I'm not inherently anti-cop or anything like that. That's warriors. That we need warriors. But the way they're trained and the way this whole thing is gone, and it's not even the fault of any one cop or all cops or anything. It's just the whole way that the society has been going. More and more militarized, more and more shadow warrior energy, boom, 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 just collectively over years. But so I just, you have to look at the whole thing and you have to go, okay, I'm on the cop's side. Let me put myself in the shoes of the woman now, or the woman's family, or the woman's child. And you have to do that exercise. Or I'm on the woman's side. Let me put myself and imagine what the cop's going to have to go through, and how sad it is for all of us that we have to deal with all this shadow warrior garbage. And cops themselves are now scared because there was that whole backlash with George Floyd and all the wokeism and everything. And so now they don't know what to do and and so it's a jumbled mess for everybody. But then you have to go trace that back. You have to go find that energy. You have to find the energy that, on one hand, you find the energy that you're dumping, right? Find the rage that you're dumping and go trace that back and go do the emotional clearing practice and bring that up and start to become conscious of and move that rage up. Get it out of the shadow and get that rage up and figure out where your rage is coming from. Because people are using these things on Facebook, or it's not on Facebook. I mean, I guess it's on Facebook too. I'm seeing it on Twitter, wherever it is, on the news. People are using these occurrences that they're finding in the society, and they're using them as triggers, and then it triggers their complex, and then they get to dump all their aggression. So you got to go trace that down and get in touch with your repressed aggression. And so that's one thing. Then you have to do the practice of getting in the other person's shoes and start to bring compassion into it and start to feel compassion. Even if it's hard at first, you have to start feeling compassion and bringing that into the whole situation. Then you have to kind of expand it out and see how it was all just kind of a collective event that kind of all kind of many things stacked together to create this. And how that what we really want to do is we want to just have more normal relations and with government and with each other. I mean, you go back to the 1950s or whatever, where my stepdad was a cop, and so he was like a small town cop. And the way he was doing policing compared to the way they're doing it now, all militarized, no comparison. Or you go to some place like Holland. I spend time in Holland quite a bit. And you look at the policing there, it's just nothing like what we have here. All over places in Europe. The cops they're just, and I don't even know if they may have gotten guns recently. I know in England they got guns maybe a decade ago or something like that. I think they might have gotten them in the last 5, 6, 7 years or something like that. I'm not sure. Just the average, little village cops. But they didn't even have guns for the longest time. So completely different societies and ways of doing things. Okay, let me scroll down here. Brad. Hi, Brad. I think the cop's psychology had more going on than just his car incident, though, like extreme hate rage. Yeah, because him or one of the cops was like, said something about "fuck you, bitch" or something like that, like right after he shot, or right after, I don't know which one said that, but that's either in that cop or in the culture, and it's all kind of to take the cop's side for a minute. It's like, imagine this is ICE though. These are federal agents that are going into these. So they're going, just think about the whole thing. Federal agents going in there to arrest illegal aliens or whatever we're calling them. And so then you get all these activists, all these left-wing activists that project into the migrants. They project into them and see them as their children to be taken care of. And they project all this compassion into them and everything. And then when those people are being attacked, then they go in and defend them. And they're being encouraged to do this by the protest industrial complex, let's call it that. And so then they're all amped up, and all the left-wing media is amping them all up. And then they go out there in these protests to protect the migrants, or whatever we're calling them, and then they're the front line. So these people, the left-wingers are people who, their persona is that of a compassionate, caring person. That's how they like to think about themselves. The conservatives, the right-wingers, are more in touch with their warrior. So like I often say, the liberal wears their lover on their sleeve and shoves their shadow, the liberal wears their lover on the sleeve and shoves their warrior into the shadow. The conservative wears their warrior on their sleeve and shoves their lover into the shadow. So you have these two, like I was talking about earlier, the warrior and the lover. They're hard to get mixed together and to work together. And so you have the left-wing protesters. Their whole persona is about compassion and equity and inclusion and all these feminine values, but then they've repressed their warrior energy down because that doesn't fit into their persona. The right-wingers can be warriors, no problem. They're like, yeah, guns, trucks, killing, war, whatever it is, they're into it. With them, it's harder to get them to feel compassion, even though most of them claim to be Christians. And it's all about the heart and turning the other cheek and all of that. They're really hypocritical in that way, because Christianity doesn't teach war and doesn't teach that kind of behavior at all. But so anyway, the liberals have got the warrior in their shadow. And so then they get these opportunities. They're triggered, and they're triggered by a collective complex that says, go out to this protest. People are getting texts on their phones saying, protest day, save the migrants, whatever it is. So they go out there, they get in the street, they're going to be heroic today. They're going to show these police officers, give them a piece of their mind and show them what it really is. Then they go out there, and then the police, and they do that. And so then the police now have seen that so many times. They've seen so many just unhinged, quote unquote, crazy people at these protests. And these left-wing protests are very chaotic and very intense. And there's a lot of shadow warrior energy just spilling out all over the place. And they hate the cops. And so the cops go into that environment and they're like, these are the enemy. These people hate us. And they're obstructing our job and they hate our guts. And so then they have the excuse, the cops do, to project that hate, that derision, that sadism onto them. And so then you have a whole culture of this and stuff. And then somebody like Donald Trump gives the ICE agents, a free pass, do whatever it is, whatever it takes, get the job done. And so now they feel emboldened. The cops do. And and then they had to suffer through the George Floyd thing, because when the George Floyd thing happened, that was kind of where the liberals got to use their warrior energy and their magician energy to kind of take those cops and kind of put them in a box. And they did. And there was a number of years of defunding the police and all that kind of stuff. And they got shamed and put in a box and shamed. And so now Trump gets in and they're like, okay, out of the box now. And they're pissed off of what they just went through culturally. So this is so all sides have this stuff going on. And then on the cop side, you just have this, years and years of militarization and teaching the cops that that citizens are every citizen that walks up to you could potentially kill you. And to a degree, you can hear how the cops might be right about that, because look how violent the society is. And then it's just violence, violence, violence. There's violence on TV. Every movie is incredibly violent. All these violence everywhere. And then wars and conquest and all this imperialism and all this kind of stuff, and bombing other countries and everything and cheering about it. So we are just leaking aggression and violence all out of ourselves. So then the cops say, well, we need to protect ourselves from these stupid, dumb, violent Americans that could do something to us. So we need to be armed and we need to be cautious and we need to. So it's all together. It's the whole psyche of the whole collective that's all contributing. We're all playing our role in the whole thing. There's not one side or the other that's more responsible than the other. We're all playing our role. And so this is what our job is as alchemists. What our job is to pull out of the whole thing. Stop seeing it as something 3D in the world. Stop seeing it as an exercise. Don't see it as a 3D thing in the world. See it as a movie, and you're getting sucked into the movie. And why are you sympathizing or empathizing with this character or this team or whatever? Go trace that back into yourself to try to understand it about yourself. And trace that energy back, and then find some integration process to move that energy in yourself, especially this aggression, so that you don't have to be, adding more fuel to the fire, and you can be out of it and you can be above it. And then you can bring clarity and perspective to other people who are stuck in it. And the more people, it's like go back to the metaphor of a virus, and they talk about super spreaders or what? No, what is when there's an actual pandemic, then not a fake pandemic, a real pandemic. When there's an actual pandemic, then the actual science behind that says is that if you catch the disease and your body heals from it, you're now immune. And then you go into the world and you actually block the transmission of the virus. The more people who become naturally immune breaks down It's like fire moving through a forest or whatever, right? And so it's like what do they call those areas and those in a forest or whatever, fire breaks, where it can't cross over this area there. And so the more of us that become immune, and Matthias Desmet talks about this when he talks about mass formation, or what was termed mass formation psychosis by Robert Malone. He made a mistake and called it that, but then it became that's the term, which is nothing more than Jung's collective shadow. Same thing with Wetiko. It's just a restatement of Jung's theory of the collective shadow. But so when you become immune to this and you can't get sucked into it, then you come in, you bring clarity, and this calms the whole thing down. So we need more people who can get out of it, but you can't get out of it if you're getting sucked into it against your own will. If when you see these events, it sucks you in so far that you're taking a side and you're beating up other people online or whatever it is, and you're sucked into it, you can't be of assistance, right? And so you have to actually have done enough of the shadow integration work in yourself so where there's not such a large amount of repressed aggression to where you need to use this excuse to dump it. That's what's going on here. We have so much repressed aggression that we need these scenarios to dump. And so it's almost like the whole collective creates these scenarios as a release mechanism, like I called it, a maladaptive release mechanism. Let's see here. I'm going to go through your comments now. Brad, I think I talked to you. We just talked to Brad. Okay, so Fringe Minority Report. See, I have to read your handles, and it's funny. It seems to me that we're actively encouraged by our society to have no knowledge of self. Could that be where some of my resistance fears around doing shadow work come from? Yes, definitely. We don't have a shadow awareness ethic in our society. We have a shadow projection and a shadow displacement ethic. Thousands of years of projecting and displacing. That goes back to primitive societies. This is just, we're really only entering the phase where we're even aware enough or capable of being aware enough to recognize, oh, we're projecting and displacing. Oh, okay. We should work on this. We should integrate this material. We should find other ways to sublimate this material in a healthy way and not just dump it on each other. Oh, okay. We're only like 100 years into that, really. And so there is a large resistance, and the old system, the deep state, so to speak, the psychological, the psychospiritual deep state of mankind has been working in this way. It's just like that. It's as above, so below. Look at the deep state of the government or whatever, and all the little intricate little complexes and stuff that are in there feeding off of money and feeding off of manipulation and all the stuff that's going on. Well, we all have an inner deep state, and collectively we have an inner deep state, and that system is running the way it's been running. And we've been in this mode of expansion, right? So, I don't know, 5,000 years ago, there's 100 million people on the planet. Now there's 8 or 9 billion people on the planet, right? And so we've expanded. How did we expand? We conquered other countries, other nations, other tribes, other territories. How did we do that? We did that by projecting onto them. You're the bad ones. Demonizing them, seeing them as different, seeing them as a threat, and instead of trying to work with them, saying, let's just demonize them, and then that'll be a good excuse to take the territory, to dump our own aggression on them, and to move forward and to expand. And so this group is evil, take them out, dump our stuff at the same time, get a new piece of property, get the resources, all that. So that's the way mankind's been in that expansion mode for all of civilization for the last 10,000 years or whatever it is. And so we have a psyche, a collective psyche that requires shadow projection and displacement. So not only is it our society that's doing this, it's all human societies. Although some societies will displace internally onto each other and repress their own people, and some people will do it more externally and oppress others outside. But these shadow qualities are in all of us. And some societies are, it's also a function of the size and the power. Once you get to the size of an empire like the United States or whatever, then this energy really starts to flow. When you're like a little tiny country like Holland or Denmark and you got to get along with everybody for survival purposes, then this energy is not as powerful in there. But at one point, Denmark was part of Sweden, and Sweden was a naval force, and they owned all of Scandinavia was Sweden at one point, or the Dutch Empire, the British Empire, and so we've had other empires, obviously, Greeks, Romans, and so there are different phases of civilization where it's more projective and using shadow aggression, shadow displacement more actively, and then there's periods when it's not, and we're definitely in one of those periods. So back to what you're saying, Fringe Minority Report, also in the family, and I would even put the family ahead of the whole society. So does the family have consciousness? Do the parents have self-awareness and consciousness? Do they have will and a inclination to work on themselves? Do they have that? Was that in there? In my case, it's interesting because not everybody, some people do have parents that are more on that side, and some people don't. And it's weird because like my family, actually, when I was in my, when I was conceived, my parents were 25 and they were in the whole 60s counterculture thing and stuff. And my dad was reading Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell and Carlos Castaneda and all that stuff. And him and my mom were talking about all that stuff all the time and everything. And I think my mom said my dad even saw Joseph Campbell speak live, and they saw Ram Dass speak live and all that. So they were actually in that field. Now, as they, raised children, they kind of fell into the matrix and did the kind of whole boomer thing or whatever. And but at least that example was there. And then I became a musician. That was my whole focus until about 20 years ago. And then I started kind of going into this direction. I kind of have my parents as kind of that example, although my parents did not go as far as I did. But then there's somebody like Melissa, and neither of her parents was inclined in this way at all, right? And she was just as deep into this as I am. So it's like, it's in the family, but it is not the only determinant. But it might be in the family as to how easy it is, or if it's easier for you, or if it's harder for you, because of that example. And so, and if your family is really working on their junk, then they're cleaning themselves up, and so then they're not going to be as toxic to their children as they would be otherwise. But yeah, so there is that, but your resistance and fear around doing shadow work is also just extremely natural, because the shadow is everything that the ego, your conscious mind, can't handle. Simply, it's all it really is. It's everything your conscious mind can't handle. And so, so it doesn't want it. It's in cognitive dissonance. There's pushback there. It doesn't want to look at that stuff. It doesn't want to look at old fears. It doesn't want to look at rage. It doesn't want to look at old grief and how you got hurt. It doesn't want to go rehash old memories. It wants to go forward. It wants to look into the future, and it wants to cope in whatever way it can. And it's just a natural inclination not to want to go into the darkness, not to want to go where there's pain, not to want to go into, not to want to take yucky medicine. This is natural. And so to do this work is to go against your natural inclinations. But that is also the same as anything that's really worth doing in life, even something external, right? Because anytime you have a goal that's external, there's going to be all these things in your way, and you're going to have to work through all those things. And whatever direction it is, there's going to be pushback. If you're an external person, an extrovert, and it's all about your career and moving up the ladder and stuff, there's going to be all kinds of people in your way. And there's going to be all kinds of difficult things that you're going to have to do to get what you're aiming at in whatever field it is. And so you're always going to be up against things that are hard. But I think the human being, which is naturally oriented externally, but for survival purposes, internal inspection is a luxury in human history, because it's more about what's going on out there. How do I survive? How do I fit in? What are they doing? And so to turn it around and start going into your own psyche and pulling this stuff up and inspecting it and doing all this work is against what your natural ego inclination is, and it's actually something that's relatively new in human evolutionary history. And so hi Theo, I'm going to call you. I'm going to just answer one more person's comment here, and then I'm going to call you. How much time do we have? We got like 20 something minutes. We can go a little later if we have to. Did I read Jung's book on UFOs? Oh, right, exactly. I have not read Jung's book on UFOs. All I did was bookmarked it and said, okay, I put it in my wish list on Amazon, because there's other books ahead of that. Where's the book I'm reading right now? I don't have it in front of me. It's an IFS book by Ion Farvahar, and then I have this giant Ken Wilber book, The Religion of Tomorrow, that he put all of the pathologies, the shadow side of all the different stages. You know, in integral theory, you have all these stages: first tier stages, second, third tier stages, and I got to get through that. So, and then so eventually I'll come to that. I got other ones behind that too. Okay, Theo, I'm going to call you back, and I'm going to pull you in, call you right now, and we'll see what happens. How is this going to work? Here we go. Theo, you there?
Yeah. What's up?
Yeah. What's up, brother?
Yo, yeah, it's good morning from Thailand here.
Oh, from Thailand. Okay. Where are you from originally?
Israel.
Okay, nice. What are you doing in Thailand?
I'm just living my life, man. Yeah, it's like it's been a hell of a journey since like the whole COVID nonsense. Like, you know, I was stuck in Israel for like 3 years. I was like, I'm never going back. That's it. I'm done.
I know they were. I heard the Israelis were like 90% of them took the vax.
Yeah. It's one of the highest vaccinated countries,
Yeah.
and then there was the whole October 7th thing, and I was like living near Gaza at that time, so I was like, I did it all up, man.
So how did you? Do you have a wife or a relative or a business, or how did you get into Thailand?
No, but I had already the travel experience. Like I was traveling already before the COVID nonsense. So
Yeah.
I was like traveling for a couple of years. I was all over East Asia. I was in China, Korea, Japan. And I just always wanted to visit the other side of the world, so to speak. And I was always fascinated by it and enchanted by it. How also in philosophy, like you go to the East when you start to open your mind, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of like that for me. So yeah, and so like I said, after I had to go back to Israel in the COVID era, and had to go through that, and that totally blew my mind. Like my mind was already open at that time, but what happened? Like I totally didn't buy into any of that, into any of the scam, and
Good.
I was researching a lot of things, and so that's how actually I found out about Mark Bessio and the whole occult information stuff.
Yeah, right. So that was kind of like COVID was like your big red pill moment.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so and now are you addicted to red pill information?
Now I'm addicted to Carl Jung psychology, man. Thanks to you.
You got to go through the red pill, like, oh my God, the new world order. You got to go through that, but then you kind of got to get to the Carl Jung or something like that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So
hopefully, yeah.
What are you looking at for Carl Jung and that kind of thing?
Well, like I said, I'm still a newbie in regards to this. So I think I found out about your channel through just the network, like the One Great Work or Soundpath. You've been there. Like I'm one of the managers of the Soundpath Jerusalem Freedom Music Festival.
Oh, that's right. I saw there was the Theo in there.
With
That's
Jerry.
right. Yeah, with Jerry. Yeah, exactly. Okay, great.
Yes. So that's how I found out about you, and so I started watching your latest videos, and heard about what's happened with Mari and
Melissa.
Mari.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was kind of interested in how you were kind of accepting, because I imagine it was like very, very difficult thing to go through. So I was just sort of interested also how are you dealing with it, and I saw you were actually dealing with it really well. So that was already inspiring for me to listen to you. You're kind of, like you said, you were alchemizing it in a very positive way, and I think that's really amazing, man. So that's already made me want to support you.
Oh, thank you. I did a lot of crying, man. I learned how to cry when Melissa and I were together. We did this John Ruskin emotional clearing, or we called it emotional processing, where when you're triggered by something, you just allow the energy to come through you, and then it usually breaks through to grief, and then you cry through it. And so we did a lot of crying, and I learned, how to do it easily. And so I don't feel any blockage with that anymore. And so then when this happened, I just cried like 3 times a day, every day for like a whole year. I'm still crying, but it's not quite that much. It's a lot less. And then I made that movie about her. And if you want to send me a message, or if anyone that's hearing this wants to see the movie about her, just send me a message and I'll send you the link. I can't put it out right yet, but I can send a private link to anybody and can learn about Melissa. But it's just it's just a really very bizarre thing, because we never thought that we both thought that she was going to get over this through the cancer. We didn't think it was going to kill her. And then when it did, it was just like, okay, what does this mean? And what does this mean for all of our philosophy? What does this mean for everything? So I've really had to really kind of try to figure out what's happening. And then the other thing is just, I realized how much I was projecting, back to Jungian psychology, I was projecting my anima, my feminine qualities onto her. She was carrying these for me. And so then when she's not there anymore, now I have to kind of own these qualities. And it's so weird, because there's like when you're living with another person, we lived together for 12 years. And when you're living with this other person, you have this very deep relationship, and then that person disappears. You're missing their physical presence. That's the first thing you're missing. But then you're missing the fact that you don't have somebody to project onto. So she was holding like female magician qualities. She was holding that. She was holding mother qualities. She was holding daughter qualities. She was holding every aspect of woman that a woman can carry. A little bit of that she was carrying for me. And then when she's gone, that evaporates, that movie screen evaporates, that projection screen evaporates, and then I have to feel, it has to work its way through me. So now I could tell this story to some of my friends where she would always cook. She was a cook. She would be in the kitchen and she would be cooking. And I would just watch her like chopping, on the chopping board and cooking vegetables and stuff. And I would stand in the kitchen and talk to her usually every night. And then when I had to become the cook, when she was gone and I had to start cooking, I could look down at my own hand and I could feel like my hand was her hand. And it was like, right. And so it's like, it's like that. It's like she's me kind of. And then the other night, I know I have a lot of experiences like that, but then the other night I had an experience where I'm still in the kitchen and then I'm cooking, I'm chopping. And then instead of seeing it in my hand or something, I feel Melissa show up inside my chest. I mean, I'm already, sensitive there and stuff, but then I actually feel like she's inside me, like she just showed up, like a spirit just shows up in my chest, in my heart chakra. And so this is like another level of anima integration. And so I'm like going through all of this, and then I'm making the movie about her every day. I worked on it for a year, and then I'm looking at her constantly and working through the movie. And so this is all integration process. And then now I'm on the other side, and I'm like, what am I going to do with my life without Melissa? Because everything was oriented around Melissa. And now it's like, so it's all very, it's challenging, but not so challenging that I can't handle it. I can handle it because we trained ourselves to be developed enough to be able to handle it. So it's like something that now it's like, God's putting me through this lesson now. So it's very interesting, and it's growing me up and it's developing me. It's shocking that it had to happen, but it's also something that I can see was kind of part of the greater plan, if I could say it that way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You understand.
I tried to, man. I didn't have an experience like this, thankfully, and hope I never do. I'm sure you also wish no one ever has to experience it. Well, I mean, we all eventually have to experience major death of relatives in our lives, no matter what. Right. I'm still a young guy. I'm just 29 years old, so thankfully I'm still far away from those kind of experiences. But I can only imagine, man, and so all I can say is I support you as a brother, and I'll keep recommending people your show as I've been doing.
Yeah.
So
thank you. Thanks. That's great. I'm just kind of starting this from scratch, and I'm just putting it out there. And there's not a whole lot I can do. It's just if people get something out of it. So that's why I really want to serve you guys. And so let's go to you now. And what maybe you said you didn't maybe know what to talk about, but I think maybe something has shown up in your mind since then. So is there anything I can give you feedback on, or any kind of perspective on something that's going on in your situation that maybe I can help you with?
No, I've been getting a lot just from listening to you, man. That's why I said this, because I'm also been processing some things. Like for me, the most related, let's say, event in my life is recent breakups, or let's say rejections from women, stuff like that. I'm the type of guy. Also have a big heart, so when I kind of fall in love, let's say, with a lady or something, it's a whole thing for me. It's like a whole life experience.
Right. The lover archetype. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So sometimes it's not always how to say reciprocal.
Yeah. Reciprocal. Yeah.
Reciprocal, yes, yes. So sometimes it's not like that, and that's the whole thing to kind of come to that realization sometimes, unfortunately, right? But that happens. So
that the other person doesn't have the kind of emotional depth or access that you do, and so they're not suffering as much as you are. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know, it's more personal, but I think it's just a lack of willingness to sort of ponder about like where is the person coming from, like me, where I was coming from, and like what I was trying to do. And I think it's more like a bit of a narcissistical sort of position that many people hold, or I attract those kind of people into my life, in a very loving way, and like and there's something fascinating about them. But I think I used to be hopeful that I can sort of change them a little bit, but I realized that's the wrong attitude. Not in a forceful way, but like in a way that they can maybe feel my lover. They can feel those kind of intentions, those kind of vibrations and all that, but that's not always the case. So like I had to sort of realize that I can't be doing this. Then I just turn myself into how to say, like something to be consumed by like energy vampires. I'm sorry, my English is not the best.
Yeah, no, your English is amazing. It's amazing. Just keep going. Yeah. No, I understand. So you might be attracting narcissists, and then you're falling in love with them, and then they kind of maybe use you up, and then you got to suffer through the withdrawals and all of that. Yeah.
Right. So that's a recent experience I've been going through. So I think thanks to watching your videos, I managed to pull out from that. Because at first I was totally in love, thinking, oh, it's all synchronicities, and she's doing that on social media, and that's related to me, and so like,
oh yeah,
maybe it was in a certain way,
yeah.
But like it just wasn't reciprocal enough, and I had to be honest with myself that I can't be letting myself just be sucked dry by people who don't fill me back up. That's sort of what a recent lesson in my life I had to learn.
Yeah, this is a big one, and this is going around, that the awareness of narcissistic personality disorder, or just narcissism as a shadow personality trait, and we're in a period of society, of Western society, of being where there's high amounts of narcissism, and a lot of this is compensatory. We're compensating for the fact that we didn't get our emotional needs met as children, and so then the narcissist is looking for that narcissistic supply. They're looking for that, and because they didn't really get that really good bonding from the parents, from the mother and the parents. And so if you can, and then you may have it in your own parents, and so this is a pattern that comes to you from them, and so, but if you can start to realize that there are, that most of this, I think there is some very, very, so when you get to the point of narcissistic personality disorder, it's almost like it's like a low level of psychopathy, and so that's the more extreme side of it, and that's not what you're interfacing with most of the time.
No.
But so it's more, and so it's really just a compensation for childhood abandonment. And so if you can recognize that the person's narcissistic behavior is a coping mechanism, and it's how they've learned to cope, and it's not something they're doing consciously, and they're just, it's a coping mechanism. And then on your side, feeling going towards them is also a strategy for a coping, or a strategy for getting your needs met, because if you didn't really if you why would you go into a relationship with this person if you there may be a part of you that says, oh, I have someone that will love me now. I'll take the opportunity. Wow, great. This is great. And you go into it, even though it might be unhealthy, it's better than nothing. And so you take something that's better than nothing, and then so we both kind of have we're both kind of contributing to the circuit. But another way to kind of look at this is if you look at the internal family systems model, IFS, it helps you to recognize how that when we get hurt in early life, we get parts of our psyche split off. And Jung calls them complexes, but our parts of our psyche split off into parts, and then they take different roles. And that these behaviors and stuff are parts trying to cope, and this is the only way they know. And so most people are walking around with these different parts. We're all walking around with these different parts, and we basically all have multiple personality disorder. We all have multiple personalities that are influencing us, and when you get into this situation, this personality comes online with your boss at work or whatever, and then you get into this situation with your boyfriend or girlfriend, another part comes online, and then you over here, another part comes online, and so and we're not aware of it. And so this person that is, your narcissist lover that dumped you, or you dumped them, or whatever happened, and you're looking back at this and going, what the hell just happened? That just blew up, and this was so ugly, and why did it happen? Is because they are not fully themselves. That other person doesn't really understand the different parts that are operating inside of themselves, and they're just on autopilot. So just recognize as much as you can that the other person, it's like the other person has been, it's like back to like a airplane analogy, they've been hijacked. It's like they're not the captain of the plane. They've been hijacked. A terrorist got in there and said, take the plane over here. So they've been hijacked by a autonomous complex, it's in IFS, you have an exile and a protector. And they're basically doing what they can to try to get their needs met in whatever way they've learned how to do it, even if it's ugly. And so the solution for it is to recognize your parts and to recognize why your parts might want to get with their parts. What is the connection between your shadow parts and their shadow parts? That is because you meet somebody and you're like, oh, this is a very attractive person, we really get along and everything's great. But then you have shadow parts too that are also meeting each other. And so they're gonna have a dance too. And so so you want to kind of learn about what your shadow parts are through whatever system, and then get in touch with them and yourself and start to recognize how they operate. And then what you can do in your relationships is once you get a certain like comfort level of understanding your own psychological makeup, and not even in a super, it takes life, it's a life work. But just to kind of go, okay, I know I have this part and I know I have this part. I know I find narcissists because of this, because of my parents, and because of this, or whatever happened to me. And you kind of have a basic understanding of kind of why you're attracting these people and why this is happening. Well, then you can be engaged in this psychological work on yourself. And then your next girlfriend, when she says, well, what do you like to do? And you're like, oh, well, I study IFS and Jungian psychology and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And I analyze myself and my relationships. Well, they're gonna either come into the relationship and be like, wow, I do that too. I'm also learning this stuff. And then you can compare notes, and then you can have an alchemical relationship with that person. Or that's going to scare them and they're going to be like, oh, you're going to see through me, and then they're going to walk away. So,
which is going to be a good riddance.
But you might have to be lonely more often. That's the downside to it. That's the definite, a real downside is that the more aware you become, and then the more you start bringing your awareness into relationships, the more that threatens relationships, or it makes incredible relationships. So I think that's your only choice at this point.
I think so too. Yeah. So I had to realize that because like I said, when I really started to integrate all those Jungian type of psychology ideas, and that's what prompted me to end my connection with that lady that.
Is this a Thai lady?
That was a bit too narcissistic for me.
Is she Thai?
No, actually, no. Okay. No, not a Thai lady. No, not at all. No. I would love to try to meet the Thai lady. I'm wondering what kind of spectrum of psychology they're at. I guess there is a whole spectrum within Thai ladies, but many of them are already also Western now. With all the toxic culture that's popular these days. But
for sure.
But that's a big thing I wanted to touch on is that mentioned, but also in regards to like how toxic just the whole relationship culture is. I mean, like you mentioned, it's all the way back to parents and child. Like that's already toxic, and then the whole romantic relationships is very toxic. So like when you meet try to meet a lady, she's carrying with her all the shadows of all her previous relationships,
and you are too.
Although I'm working on myself, but I come to realize, oh shit, even this morning I felt like I kind of shed the light on a shadow that I had in regards to relationship, like how we mentioned like narcissism or like using each other. I think I had also in me, like a bit of a sort of narcissistic idea of the relationships, like, oh, I'm using you for this and you're using me for that. Yeah. And so.
Right.
So I had to shed the light on that and like realize, hold on a second, that's not right. That's toxic right there. I can't be continuing this in any way. Like I have to make sure it's absolutely reciprocal.
Yeah.
And as pure as possible.
Clean.
Right? So,
clean, transparent. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's right. Because the alchemist is we're clean. We're cleaning. We're refining our psyches. We're making everything cleaner, and we're taking everything that's the junk, the yucky stuff, and we're bringing it up, putting it out there. We're putting it on the table. We're first bringing it into our own consciousness, and then we can share it with each other, and then we can use whatever system we want to use and start to kind of refine it and find the gold that's inside of it, because there's always gold. There's a golden shadow also, and there's the stuff that's really your genius that really should be in the world, but it can't get in the world because there's shame or fear around it. That's like the typical golden shadow. But then there's also just gold inside the yucky stuff too, just inside the rage, inside the shame, inside the actual, there's some gold, there's flakes of gold in there. And so we're mining that stuff. And this is just, I'm telling you, man, that if, okay, so there are all kinds of spiritual groups, and there's even Jungian psychological groups, and there's all kinds of people that are supporting themselves and they're doing some kind of inner work or something like that. But the one thing that most of them have in common is that most of them, almost all of them, have a limit on how far they can go into the shadow. And so there's only so much you can do with those groups, and you try to find peers, you try to find other people that can do this, and there's a limit to what they can do. And so what I'm talking about here is there's no limit. There's no limit. There's nothing too ugly. There's nothing too caustic. There's nothing too shadowy or whatever that I can't hear about it, or that you can't deal with it. And so, or that you can't hear about it and I can't deal with it. And so it's basically, it's like we're just going, there's nothing that stops us. Nothing stops us. And like Melissa is like, that was her ethic. She was like, I'll do this till I die, which did end up happening. She actually died in the process. But but she's a good example of a hero, of kind of a martyr in a way, for somebody that would just nothing was too yucky, nothing was too ugly for her to want to go dig it out and work on it and pull it out. And so that's what we have to do now. We're kind of, I called her the extremist. And I think I would like to call you an extremist, and I would like to call everybody else that's listening, that's on the chat, and all of us extremists, like extreme sport athletes, right? It's a lifestyle, and there's nothing that we can't work through over time.
Yeah, even though we are actually the whole Balancia, right?
Well, we're aiming at that. That's like our potential. That's what we're aiming for. We're saying that so we can't be balanced because we're inwardly dissociated. We're inwardly fractured. And so what we have to do to become balanced is we need to actually mend those fractures. So this psychological work, psycho-spiritual work, is the process of figuring out what's broken, what's fractured, and then bringing some healing, some love and attention to those fractured parts so that the psyche can heal them, so that we can get at least somewhat healed. And then we won't have to pass it on to our children as much. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is an extreme process that leads you to balance. So it's kind of like a paradox a little bit.
It leads you. Well, I would say that it's like a surgery or something like that. It's like you have something, you have a tumor, and they have to actually cut your body open and cut the tumor out. It's pretty extreme. Like most of the time you would just, change your diet or something. But by the time you have to actually cut the tumor out, that's pretty extreme. And so that's kind of like where we'll go wherever we have to go. And we're just doing this as an example. We're doing it for ourselves, but then we're doing it as an example for everybody else around us.
Right.
And then we're also recognizing that this is a long-term process, that this is the human evolution over a long period of time. These are like, look back in history, this is just movements, that these are long movements in time. And so we have to kind of go, most of the world is not going to do all this, but if we will do it, and we will take it seriously, and we will each become competent in this domain, well then I think naturally it's going to put some pressure on society, because then there's a group of people, there's a movement of people who are super serious about doing this kind of work on themselves, and there's no limit. I say it's part of the human potential movement. It's like a new wave of it. There's no limit to it, and they're willing to go into the shadow stuff that the other movements were not willing to go into. Well, then now this kind of shows the society, this kind of puts a pressure on the rest, on other people. It's like, what are they doing over there, So I don't know exactly how it turns out, and I'm not grandiose anymore, and I'm not, thinking that this saves the world in our lifetime or anything like that. But I do know that God and Mother Nature put us here to do this, so we have to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's that higher will, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but I think it is going in this direction. Like, I'm seeing signs that, it could be like, there's always those red pill moments. Like, for me, the big one was the whole COVID nonsense. But
Yep.
I think now, like with the whole AI thing, I think that's another red pill for many people. Like, many people losing their jobs, because of it, and they're being replaced by AI and all that. So I'm sure that's a big shocker for them, and so that can trigger them to get into stuff like this, maybe, and so and from time to time I meet people who are open to those kind of things, to red pill information, or even beyond that. Like, now that I'm starting my rhetoric with this more Jungian psychology stuff, because just naturally I'm into it now. I find people are open to that as well. So
Jung's getting popular again. Yes.
Absolutely. So we are definitely on the right path in every way, man. So
we
keep going, man.
Okay, well, it's good talking to you, Theo, and I'm glad you called in.
Well, you too, man.
And we found some good stuff to talk about. So we'll do it again soon.
Because it's a call-in show, but it's also a call-in show, right?
Yeah, I know. It's funny, huh? Yeah, Colin to Colin.
Yes. Exactly. I hope more people call you. I hope I inspire, because I'm not just a random guy. I'm not any Jungian genius or anything.
Well, you are your own genius. You're definitely your own. You're your own genius in your own way. And you are just as much of a genius as me. And you're going to figure out exactly where that is, and then you're going to be on target. But yeah. Okay.
Well,
great.
It.
Yeah. No problem. And
great. All right.
Yeah. We'll do it again soon.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay. Bye for now. See, folks, that was great. And see how easy that was? He called me through WhatsApp. We had a nice conversation. Worked through some stuff. That's great. So I encourage all you guys to do that. I think we talked for about half an hour. And that is one of the things to really kind of dig in, because I only want to do stuff deep. I don't want to do superficial, 5 minutes with this person or whatever. So it takes that. So right now we don't have that many callers, and so it's perfect. It works out great because we have the time for that. So it's great. I like that. Might have to go longer on these shows. If we start taking more calls, we might have to go to 3 hours or something like that. But okay, so now I think let me just put the call out, last call. If there's anybody that wants to comment, say anything, recommend anything, or ask a question, or pass something along this way, put it in the chat. Or if anybody wants to call in, I think we can do one more if anybody wants to. Otherwise, we'll pick it up next Tuesday. And if anybody knows any other alchemists that would like this show, that want to participate and make it better, and feel some comfort that there's some other people like you. And you see how I am. I'm very encouraging of the movement and of the just letting everybody know that there are people there's no limits on this. Even the Jungians, most people who study Jungian psychology, are not, just most people on any of these paths are just not going to going to the limit. And we are. So there has to be some place for us and where we can support each other. Yes, Fringe Minority says, thanks for explaining why I've been single for so long. Right. Maybe because you're putting that standard onto your relationships. We have to talk about this. I'll be talking about the same kind of stuff a lot. And let me check my other phone thing or whatever. But yeah, the alchemical relationship. This is the key. Exactly what I said to Theo, the way you do it. You can do this at any level. You don't have to be, at some high level of this. all you have to do is just have the interest and the drive to want to be studying some kind of inner work practice that's therapeutic. Not just like the Enneagram or something like that is cool, that's great, or astrology is great, or any of these kind of things, but they're not therapeutic practices. And and the Jungian psychology actually kind of set us up with a whole kind of system, but it didn't even really give us that many practices. It kind of gave us all these perspectives, and you kind of just figure out how to do it yourself. And that's really kind of all you really need. But there are now, more practices, and this is something that I've been working on and stuff. Willingness to be lonely, and it's hard, yeah. Well, it depends on your personality type. Some people are more comfortable with that. Some people are less. I'll tell you, after, I always had a very good willingness to be alone, and so I always had time to study myself and stuff. But then when I got with Melissa, that was 12 years of living with somebody. That's the longest I'd ever been with somebody, and I got very used to having a compatriot, to having a partner, and so then it's like I don't really feel like being alone again, but it is where I'm at right now, and so I'm going to accept it. And that is one of the ways that I really grew. Was I was looking for relationships. I was trying them. I had a number of different short-lived relationships, quite a number of them in my years, and each one was a learning experience. And then I had a huge blow-up, a really powerful but short-lived relationship, and it was quite shadow-filled. And so when that blew up, that was 21 years ago, and when that blew up, that's when I said, okay, I got to figure out what's going on inside of me, because this is not just her, this is me too. And so what is it about me? And that's when I started, I had Robert Johnson's book, Owning Your Own Shadow. My friend had given it to me. That's when I pulled that off the shelf and I went into Jungian psychology, and I just started going in the whole inner work direction. And at the same time, I actually got red-pilled to 9/11 and stuff like that. So I was like going in both directions at the same time. But yeah, so you try these things. You have these relationships, you try, and then you do the best that you can, and then they go where they go. And then you grow through those. And then when you're in between relationships, you just allow yourself to be in between them. And there is a fine line where you recognize that, okay, I broke up with so-and-so. I really should be studying myself right now. I'm going to be alone. And you just accept it. And then you work on yourself and you just live alone, and it's good for you. It's very good for you. And then you have time, you have focus. It's very good for you. But then there's the point to where you're hiding from a relationship. You're scared of a relationship, or you're just feeling very introverted, or maybe a lot of people who do this kind of work are naturally introverted, and then you just get pathologically introverted. And then you can't meet anybody. And then the whole thing with the way the society has become more digital and everything anyway, and everybody's on their phones, and there's a lot less physical interaction anyway, we're in a place where, people can be, what do they call that? Incels, involuntarily. No, that's not incel. That's voluntarily celibate. That's voluntarily alone. And just got to watch it. You just got to, it's all about balance. And so we don't want to just, not go out, not meet people, not do anything to meet people. But then at the same time, once you start going in this direction and you start becoming more self-aware, and like what me and Theo were talking about, where it's like, okay, you're going to actually bring your psychology, your psychological depth and interest into the relationship. And then when you have a conflict with your partner, you're going to want to go into the conflict with them and say, okay, what happened? What feelings were there? What part of you was active? What part of me was active? We used to use Eckhart Tolle's pain body understanding a lot. We used Robert Moore's system a lot. I don't know what else we used. We kind of used the pain body one a lot for a long time, and that one worked. And so before we even found IFS, but and so you just you have the willingness to work through the conflicts. Melissa had that. I had that, and Melissa had that. So every conflict would be like, okay, wow, we got taken over. That happened. What part of us was active? What was behind that? How did that conflict look like the prior conflict? How was that just a repeat of what we've already done? Where does it come from originally? Did we do it in our prior relationships? Does it come from our parents? Tracing it down and trying to map it out and figure out what is making us have these conflicts. And then us both analyzing it and bringing it into consciousness and working through it. And so conflicts with us never left residual anger. There was never any leftover anger. It never lasted more than a couple days, because it only took a couple days for us to, you might not talk about the conflict right after it happens. It might be the next day or the next day. It might take a couple days, but within a couple days, we've worked it through and we've come back together, and we've really, everything that was down there has been pulled out, and more trust has been developed, because we recognize the other person, we can trust the other person to work through it. So every conflict just actually strengthens the relationship instead of weakening it. So that's the way that goes. And body analysis is key. Yeah, I mean, constant out-of-body analysis. Oh, I think I know what you're saying. Being the watcher, being above the conflict, outside of it, and watching it from above. Yeah, having the watcher, or the witness, as they often call it in Eastern practices. Yes, that's what we're developing. And I can actually track how my conflicts with people, I have an explosion, and then you get taken over by the complex, by the pain body, you get taken over, and then you react. And then later you recognize, oh my God, what did I do? But then it got to the point to where I was watching it as the conflict was going on, but I still couldn't control it. And then it got to the point with me and Melissa to where we could catch the conflict before it turned on. And so then we could be like, uh-oh, here it comes. I can feel it. Something's happening. And she would say, yeah, I can tell. It's in your tone of voice. Your whole tone of voice changed. And then I would be like, yeah, you're right. It did. And then we would talk about it, and then be like, okay, it's in the room. The complex is active. It's in the room. It's here. And then we could, do something to calm it down. And it might try to come back later, but that's the level we got to where we could actually stop these things before they actually happen. Not every time. We did not become absolute masters, but we got to the point that's where 99% of the population is not at that level. So we did advance a lot. But yeah. So when you do this, and you bring this kind of practice and this awareness into your relationship, now you're going to have an alchemical relationship. Now you're going to have a laboratory partner. Now you're going to have another superhero. You guys can be superheroes together. And then it's just, because you can fall in love with somebody, you can have all that love chemicals going on, and that's incredible. But you can still have that when you meet somebody, but then it matures into this alchemical thing, and then you become magicians. And now you got something, it's something much more rare, and something that will keep the whole thing going and turn the relationship into soul school, into alchemy school, or director school. We would say director school, learning to direct the movie of life. Okay, guys, thank you all for listening. Thanks for hanging out. And if anybody has any things they want to talk about, on the next program, oh, you know what? I'm doing another program. I've committed to doing these things. I'm committed to doing this. These ones that you're in right now, these are perfect for certain people in certain time zones, but the Europeans can't catch these because this is in the middle of the night for the Europeans. So I decided that I would do one on every first and third Saturday. The first and third Saturday. Let me check and see if that's this coming up one. Let me see if that's happening. Let me look at my calendar. So I can, before we end, I'll let you know if this is going to happen or not. So it is now Tuesday, and Saturday will be the 17th. And yes, that will be the third Saturday. So the first and third Saturday of the month, I'm doing them at Saturdays at 1 p.m. my time, which is 8 o'clock p.m. in Western Europe, in Berlin, let's say, or Amsterdam, or wherever, Paris. So I'm doing that on Saturday at 1 p.m., and you can check out if that works for your time zone. So between the two broadcasts, that might work. I still think it still cuts out some people in Australia or whatever, I think, but not sure. I have to look into that. So anyway, this Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time, Texas time. It's where I am right now, Texas. And yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, Theo. It's my pleasure. Thanks for hanging out, and thanks for getting on the call with me. Yeah, that's the healthiest relationship. That is the healthiest relationship I can think of, absolutely. And I'm not just talking, out of theory, because I had that with Melissa, and so that's an incredible gift that I had. And now I can actually talk to people about that from experience. So, I mean, that was just like, wow, that's really cool. But, yeah, so this Saturday at 1 p.m. Texas time, and then back again on Tuesday at the same time, 7 p.m. Texas time, and we'll keep going. And if you have any subjects, you want to contact me, shadowtechalchemy@gmail.com. It's all over the websites. You got all that. It's in the description, all that. You can reach me. If you want to watch the movie about Melissa, let me know. I'll send that to you. Anything you guys want to share with me, or what you want to do, we'll do it. And then there we go. So have a great day or evening where everybody is, and I will see you on the next one. shadowtechalchemy.com, solutiopodcast.com, melissamarimovie.com.